All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to get some information, some background information about Miss Georgia O'Keeffe, who is the artist that we just did an ASI investigating some of her work. Now, Miss Georgia O'Keeffe was born November 15th, 1887, and she died March 6th, 1986. That means she lived to be almost 100 years old. So she is and she worked for a good portion of her life. So, we have a lot of artworks to pick from when you look up someone like Georgia O'Keeffe. She has a big body of work. So, her early life. She is an American artist. So she was born near Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. She grew up on a farm. She attended the Art Institute of Chicago. So she went to Chicago for college from 1905 to 1906. And then she moved to New York to be part of the Art Student League in 1907. And there, after she spent a couple of years in art school itself, she stayed and learned from various teachers in different programs until about 1912. Okay, then she moved away from New York and was working out, I believe it's in Arizona, when she started sending work to a mutual friend. That mutual friend handed the artworks to Alfred Stieglitz, who ended up becoming her mentor. He was a famous photographer. If we go back to that slide, he did this photograph of her. That's one of his famous pieces. Sorry, wrong way. All right. So, he is a photographer. He was a gallery owner. He discovered her work when she sent some of her drawings to a mutual friend who showed them to him. He then exhibited her work in 1916. He actually first exhibited her work without her permission because he loved her artwork so much. So he showed it, and then she found out about it later and got very upset with him. But once they talked that out, he became her mentor. What does it mean to be a mentor? A mentor is someone who teaches and kind of leads you on a path. So since he was a photographer and a gallery owner, he was good at selling artwork and kind of having art as a career. So he mentored her in that. Not long after, they started dating, and they eventually married. So, two styles of her paintings. So Georgia O'Keeffe had two real styles. She painted either still lifes or landscape. A still life is an object that is drawn from observation. So that means you're drawing an actual object that's sitting in front of you. A landscape is an outdoor scene that usually is also drawn from observation by looking at it. So landscapes are usually also drawn from observation. So now, Georgia O'Keeffe was also influenced by her environment. Her paintings tended to reflect where she lived at the time. She lived mostly in two places, in New Mexico and in New York City. In New York City, she tended to paint skyscrapers. So if you're seeing any of her skyscrapers, it was from the times when she was living in New York City with Alfred Stieglitz. She also had a home in New Mexico, which is where she ended her life. After Alfred died, she moved to New Mexico permanently. And most of those paintings involved deserts and bones. So when in both places, however, she drew her famous flowers. Now we're going to watch a little video where we're going to hear her talk about her own artwork.
The first year I was out here, because there were no flowers, I began picking up bones. Well, I wanted to take something home. I wanted to take something home to work on. I had a whole pile in the patio there. I wasn't painting them right then, but I had to get them first. And when it was time to go home, I felt I hadn't started on the country. And I wondered what I could take home that I could continue what I felt about the country, and I couldn't think of anything to take home but a barrel of bones. So when I got home with my barrel of bones to Lake George, I stayed up there quite a while that fall and painted. That's where I painted my first skulls, from this barrel of bone. And first I painted a horse's head. And then I got this cow's head. And I had the cow's head painted against the blue. And I thought, well, I have to do something else about that. And that was at the time that the men were all talking about the great American novel, the great American play, the great American... Oh, it was the great American everything. And I thought they didn't know anything about America. A lot of them had never been across the Hudson. So I thought, I'll make my picture a red, white, and blue. I'll make it an American painting for these people that don't go across the Hudson. And this was my painting. I put a red stripe down each side. Entertained me, but I don't think anybody else caught on to it for quite a while. Another thing I collected was artificial flowers that they had in all the little country stores. Poor artificial flowers, but sometimes they were very pretty. The bones do not symbolize death to me. They are shapes that I enjoy. It never occurs to me that they have anything to do with death. They are very lively.
No, George O'Keeffe denies that it has anything to do with death. She does not associate it with death. For instance, that pelvis series of the bones she found on the desert, she holds them up and then sees the mountain through the hole in the bone, so that she goes through this into nature. You can take it as a symbol of a sort of concrete immortality in these things too, that they outlast death itself.
They please me. And I have enjoyed them very much in relation to the sky.
All right, so now that we've seen a little bit more about Georgia O'Keeffe, what do we now think about her flower images? Now that we've heard her speak and that you know more of her background, about where she came from and how she started doing these paintings and who she worked with, now we're going to have a discussion about your ASI findings and what we think now. So the last part of your notes is going to be part of our group discussion. So keep your note-taking sheet out as we discuss these images.